World of Warcraft has seen some very dark times. Content droughts, design fiascos, scandals, systems too complex for their own good, and radio silence as community engagement hits an all-time low. And now Final Fantasy XIV and other competitors are closing in. But I don't think this has to be the end of the story for World of Warcraft. What World of Warcraft needs is simpler systems, more content, better community engagement so that the dev teams know what will get players excited to pick up World of Warcraft again. To that end, I have invented a system of my own, a simple system that gives players huge amounts of customization, that lets developers add awesome and useful abilities without fear of spellbar bloat, giving players the ability to upgrade 3 of their spells to be something new. I'm cooking up concepts for 7 of these upgrade spells for every spec. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are brand new. Either way, Blizzard has my express permission to use every concept I post about in these videos in the comments or on the forums. And if the Blizzard developers are too pressed for time to engage with the community, then I will. I'll get the feedback on this concept, and even if they don't take a single one of my ideas, they'll know what the players want, and most importantly, why. And they can use that to make the game better, because I want this game better. I want WoW to last another decade. When I started cooking up upgrades for hunters, I began with survival, which was a lot of work. So it actually felt pretty refreshing when I got around to cooking up upgrades for marksmanship. And Marksmanship is one of those specs where your multi-target ability buffs your other abilities to also be multi-target for a little while, a little bit like Whirlwind does for Fury Warriors. And a lot of my upgrades for a lot of other classes are things like making single-target abilities multi-target or vice versa, and that was off the table for me here, but I think I came up with a decent variety of upgrades, with the most standout ones being built around changing the feel of abilities. For example, Tiger Shot, an upgrade for aimed shot that has a shorter cast time and deals less damage, is more likely to grant 1 stack than 2 stacks of precise shots and has a 10-second cooldown. Another one is Heavy Shot, an upgrade for rapid fire that's instant cast, deals high damage and generates less focus, but deals more damage than rapid fire would do. It's got a 20-second cooldown. The third one is Centered Shots, an upgrade for precise shots that only buffs one of your arcane shots, chimera shots, or multi-shots, but it buffs it for more damage. The fourth one is Executor's Shot. It's an upgrade for kill shot that deals bleed damage and costs more focus. The sixth upgrade is Radiant Shot, an upgrade for steady shot that has a shorter cast time and generates less focus. It deals radiant damage instead of dealing physical damage. Radiant is a blend of fire and holy damage. The sixth upgrade is Frost Trap. It's an upgrade for Tar Trap that deals frost damage while enemies stand in the ice. Ticks of damage have a chance to reset the cooldown of Aimed Shot or Tiger Shot. Finally, we have Silencing Shot, an upgrade for Wailing Arrow that affects a single target and has a shorter cooldown and more damage. And now for the thinking. Marksmanship already looks like an interesting and dynamic spec to me, so the most I felt I could do was tweak the feel of several abilities. Aimed Shot and Rapid Fire could already become multi-target, so it didn't make sense to give them multi-target counterparts as upgrades like I do with many other specs abilities. Instead, I altered their feel, making Tiger Shot's cast time shorter for a lesser damage payoff that you get more frequently, and making Rapid Fire into a large, single damage projectile rather than a stream of them. Fun fact about Tiger Shot. I was going to call it Sniper Shot until I looked at your PvP talents. Again, should have done that first, honestly. Anyhow, if these do not look like good trade-offs, then please let me know what trade-offs do look good, and I'll fix them in Iteration 2. Radiant Shot was imported from the ranged survival spread of upgrades. It's also meant to be a trade-off, a shorter cast time for less focus generated. I'd read a complaint on the forums that Steady Shot's cast time felt like it was too long, which is why I picked that particular trade-off. Silencing Shot was a misunderstanding on my part. I saw Wailing Arrow deep in the list of hunter class abilities on Wowhead, and I thought, wow, the devs must have added a nifty utility cooldown for hunters. Not realizing you only get Wailing Arrow if you get your hands on Sylvanas' legendary bow. Oh well. If they don't end up giving Wailing Arrow to every hunter, I can tweak Silencing Shot to be a non-damaging upgrade for Counter Shot instead. Frost Trap was another import from Survival, and it's about doing a little multi-target damage and perchance resetting a cooldown or two. If I should have picked a different cooldown to reset, then please let me know. I had wanted to upgrade Concussive Shot to Scatter Shot, and after the fact I looked up your PvP talents and saw you already had Scatter Shot. Again, should have looked there first. Anyhow, I decided to try something else and go for a passive instead. I'm hoping that Centered Shots add some flexibility and excitement. We'll see what people say. I am prepared to change this, and to change any other upgrade for that matter. Executor's Shot was meant to make Kill Shot, well, more lethal. Sometimes the damage over time is what really gets them in the end. Though now that I think about it, Survival, including Melee Survival, also has Kill Shot. If I should have put Kill Shot in either the ranged or the Melee Survival's list of abilities, please do let me know. Melee Survival was so hard to invent abilities for. Ugh. Now, when I started out with these upgrade concepts, I went ability by ability, not purpose by purpose, if you see what I mean. I asked myself, which abilities exist in this specs kit that I can give an upgrade to? And when I created upgrades based on which abilities I could upgrade, I often aimed for something that I thought looked or sounded cool. Almost always I wanted the upgraded ability to feel at least a little bit different from the original. Often I tried to create some kind of trade-off, making the upgrade situationally useful based on things like the number of targets affected or having a stronger effect with a longer cooldown, things like that. Rarely did I upgrade the same ability more than once for the same spec, but while I was putting together each spread of upgrades, what I didn't do, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, was to figure out what goals a player would have while they're looking at a list of upgrades, and then make sure upgrades exist in the spread that allow the player to pick upgrades that help them achieve those goals. In my next iteration, I plan to have that design goal in mind, to consider what the player wants to accomplish and how they could accomplish it with the upgrades. I strongly suspect that in this next iteration, there will be a lot more cases where I upgrade the same ability in 2 or more different ways. That will give players more options, and since that's going to be the goal with goal-oriented design, who knows? I might even have 3 different upgrades for the same ability in the end. However, I can do this much more effectively in an environment that has a great deal of feedback available, and that's where you come in. You have knowledge that comes from experience with these specs. I don't. I tried to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins for each spec, but inevitably there'll be things you know that I don't because you have experience that I don't have. You'll have more and better ideas than I could hope to have, and I know I need those, so please, let me know what you think of these upgrades and what better ideas you have for what to put in their places. Now, since multi-shot takes your next few damage abilities and makes them multi-target, there isn't much difference between going into these upgrades with the intention of buffing your single target damage and going into these upgrades with the intention of buffing your multi-target damage. It's basically the same thing. I guess which ones you'd pick would depend on the fight. If there's a decent chunk of the time where the boss is going to be below 20% health, then Executor's Shot makes sense. If you like Radiant Shot's feel, you'd pick that. If you think Tiger Shot or Heavy Shot are good trade-offs, you'll pick those. To be honest, I won't know how good or bad this first iteration is or which abilities look appealing from a player's perspective until and unless I'm told by experienced marksmanship players. Are these abilities competing with each other even when you go into them with a single goal in mind? And if so, are there any upgrades that are consistently better in all circumstances, and can I tweak them so that they're better in some cases and others are better in other cases, like, say, short fights versus long fights, for example? Please bring the feedback on so that I can evaluate what I did here. I'd felt confident after making the first iteration of Marksmanship spread because I didn't see any obvious problems with the specs baseline kit, and because I had little to no difficulty finding abilities that could be upgraded. But looking at it through the lens of how can I use these upgrades for this purpose, I'm left wondering, did I really do a good job? If not, well, there's always iteration 2. as long as I get feedback that puts me on the right track. Of course, I know Blizzard probably won't take many, or even any of these suggestions. Heck, they might even have something objectively better in store for us than the semi-borrowed power upgrade system that I've cooked up here. But knowing what gets players excited will be helpful to them even so. That is why I'm sacrificing so much of my free time and energy on Project Decade. And who knows, they might just need these ideas to get WoW going in the right direction. Heck, if this video series just gets the Blizzard developers into the habit of creating a blue post with the thinking in it that goes in depth enough for us to understand what they're doing and what their design goals are, then that would be a huge step forward. Even saying the thinking out loud is sometimes enough to get you a new perspective on what you're doing. Is it really what people want? Does it serve the purposes that it really should be serving in the end? Am I really doing something just to make a system look awesome instead of making the game overall better? What does it do for the fun factor? Am I making the mistake of prioritizing my design goals over the fun factor? Are my design goals the right design goals to have? Do my ideas match the spec's feel and flavor? Is it a net gain? Is it genuinely awesome? Things like that. Plus, we just plain need more communication from Blizzard. If Project Decade gets the development team into the habit of telling us the thinking for every change they make, then the whole project will have been worth it, even if they don't take a single suggestion. Again, if you see something you don't like bad trade-offs or something you know is counterproductive or useless, or if you've thought of an idea that's better or cooler or more useful than mine, then don't hesitate to let me know. The more details you can provide about why you don't like it and what makes one of my ideas counterproductive or useless, or about why your idea is cooler or more useful than mine, the better. One of the main goals of Project Decade is to give whoever's in charge of class design and player power systems a good idea what appeals to players and what will actually get them excited to get back to WoW again. And the more you can say about the wherefore and the why, the better. I fully intend to iterate on this project and make changes in response to feedback. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've already seen mistakes in some of the things that I've done. But if those mistakes generate the kind of discussion that Blizzard needs to hear, so much the better. Blizzard needs to see player engagement, humility, and feedback actually making change in action so they can start doing what needs to be done to turn WoW around. It can be done and it should be done. World of Warcraft can last another decade. So keep the feedback coming, folks. There's one last thing. I began working on Project Decade videos back in July, and considering how many months it has taken, the fact that there are 36 different sets of feedback to curate and compile, and multitudes of decisions to make based on feedback received, ideas others have come up with, and how to weave everything together into a fun, functional, and exciting whole, I don't have a chance in the tramaculum of getting this done in any reasonable length of time unless I get volunteers to help me curate and compile the feedback I'm getting. If you're willing to help curate feedback, please let me know. If I get enough interest, I will set up a Discord server where we can coordinate everything. Thank you in advance for your feedback and support. Let's make World of Warcraft the best game that it can be.